Ready to escape into a world of enchanting pixels? What is up, my peeps? And today we're going to be reading Thomas and Friends, King of the Railway. So, yeah, let's go. It was a busy day at Brendam Docks. While Cranky hoisted heavy cargo from the waiting ships, Thomas and Percy shunted trucks. But the two engines were having too much fun and weren't paying attention. One truck bashed into Percy's buffer and tipped over. A crate fell out and split open, revealing an amazing sight. "Thomas, look," peeped Percy. "There's a metal man, a robot." "Silly tank engine," grumbled Cranky. "That's not a robot. It's a suit full of armor, like a knight used to wear." Just then, Sir Topham Hatt arrived. "Cranky's right," said Sir Topham Hatt. "Thomas and Percy, you must be more careful with your work. This armor is very old and valuable. Long ago, before there were railways, the island of Sodor was ruled by kings, and the greatest king of Sodor was the beloved King Godred. He protected the island from invaders with help of gallant knights. He wore a golden crown." The ruins of King Godred's castle can still be found at Ulfstead, on the Earl of Sodor's estate, Sir Topham Hatt continued, and the king's golden crown was kept on display there for many years, until it was stolen. The thieves were caught, but the crown was never seen again. Which reminds me, we have a special visitor coming to Sodor. You must all get washed and look your best for his arrival. The next day, there was excitement all around the island. The engines were given a good washdown and a polishing. "I heard that Spencer is coming from the mainland," peeped Emily. I hope we're not all having a wash just for Spencer," puffed James. "No," said Sir Topham Hatt. "Spencer is bringing our visitor. My old friend Robert Normanby, the Earl of Sodor, is coming home today after traveling the world for many years." Later, Thomas and the other engines arrived at Knapford Station. They all looked their best and gleamed in the sun. The station was decorated with colorful banners and balloons. Spencer rolled up, shining and proud. A brass band played as the Earl stepped out of his coach. "What a marvelous greeting," the Earl exclaimed. Sir Topham Hatt cleared his throat and spoke. "We have gathered here to celebrate—" "A celebration?" the Earl interrupted. "How marvelous! Carry on. I promise to be at my estate by 2. Enjoy your party." With that, he disappeared into his coach, and Spencer puffed away. The next morning, Thomas delivered a crate to the Earl's estate. There, he saw the Earl looking at building plans for his big project. He also met Millie, the Earl's narrow-gauge engine. "I run the estate railway for the Earl," Millie peeped happily. The Earl eagerly opened the crate and removed the armor Thomas had seen at the docks. The Earl was pleased, but then he sighed. "If only I had King Godred's golden crown, then my plan would be complete." The armor was loaded onto Millie's trucks. You mean into Millie's trucks? Anyway, before Thomas could ask about the missing crown or the Earl's mysterious plan, Millie and the Earl chugged away. Over the next few days, Thomas helped take more crates and supplies to the Earl's estate. There were so many deliveries of tools, stones, wood, and rails that James and Percy had to help. Thomas's friend, Jack the Digger, was also working at the estate. "I'm helping the Earl with his new building project," puffed Jack. Puffed Jack? You mean Oil Jack. He's not a steam-powered vehicle. He's a diesel-powered front-end loader. Oops. Anyway, he's restoring Ulfstead Castle. "So that's his plan," whistled Thomas. Thomas, Percy, and James spent the day happily shunting containers until Thomas came upon a flatbed with a very large crate on it. The Earl said it was a special delivery for the steamworks. Percy peeped that he wanted to haul it, but James thought an important package should be delivered by a fine engine like him. "If you're all so curious," the Earl said, "maybe you should all take it." The engines were coupled to each other, and they pulled the mysterious crate together. "Hello, my friends," Victor said when they arrived at the steamworks. "What is this thing in a crate that's taken so many engines to deliver?" A gantry crane lifted the crate and revealed an old engine named Stephen. His wood was worn, and he had rust holes in his boiler. He hadn't turned his wheels in years. Surprise! The old engine peeped. Stephen will be helping with my project, the Earl explained. Victor said he'd have Stephen fixed up in no time. As Victor and Stephen rolled away, Thomas asked the Earl what Stephen would be doing. I have a special job for him, but it's best not to say anything yet. Okay, sir, peeped Thomas. I won't say anything. I promise. Thomas promise, you mean? I'm sorry, I had to. Anyway. News of the mysterious old engine spread quickly. The next morning, many of the engines rolled down to the steamworks to see Stephen. He was suspended high in the air, hanging from a gantry crane. His wheels had been removed. What are you doing up there? Asked Henry. They're turning me into an airplane, Stephen joked. Stephen is one of the first steam engines ever built, said Victor. I've been around a long time, Stephen said, laughing, and I wasn't always this rusty. Back when trains were pulled by horses, Stephen continued, I worked in the mines and on the docks. And I was lightning fast. They called me the Rocket. But you new engines are so fast and strong, I'm not needed anymore. Percy asked if Stephen had ever seen knights in shining armor. Stephen laughed. I'm not that old, and I never saw dinosaurs either. The other engines also laughed. Then Stephen told Percy not to feel bad. Asking questions is always a good way to learn new things. Victor worked quickly. Soon Stephen's funnel was straightened, and his boiler was fixed. With a fresh coat of paint, he was good as new. You look really useful again, peeped Thomas. You look really useful again, peeped Thomas, James, and Percy. That is such weird wording. You look really useful again, peeped Thomas, James, and Percy tooted their horns. What kind of wording is this? Anyway. Also, Thomas, Percy, and James do not have horns. This book is weird. Anyway. Just then, Sir Topham had arrived. James, Thomas, and Percy, the Earl of Sodor, asked me if you could help with a special job. As Thomas rolled away to work, he noticed that Stephen looked sad. Suddenly, an idea flew into Thomas's funnel. He thought that it must be hard for Stephen to see the other engines being really useful. Thomas told Stephen that the Earl had a special job for him, too. Thomas knew he wasn't supposed to tell, but he wanted to cheer up his new friend. Stephen was very excited and wondered what his job could be. Thomas, James, and Percy steamed up the Earl's estate. It looked very different. Rocks and dirt had been removed, and Ulfstead Castle now towered over the land. The Earl has done so much work, peeped Thomas. What about me? Jack asked as he dumped a load of dirt and rocks into a troublesome truck. I've done a lot of work, too. James's face fell. I hope the Earl doesn't want us to cart away this dirt. That wouldn't be a very special job. The Earl led the engines inside the castle walls, where they were amazed to see a giant platform on rails. The Earl called it the Traveler. The men will work on top of the Traveler and replace the roof beams, the Earl explained, and you three engines will have to move the Traveler in place for each beam. You'll have to work carefully to keep the platform stable. We'll do our best, peeped Thomas. Thomas, Percy, and James had never done a job like this. The platform was very tall and a little scary. The three engines carefully pushed and pulled together. James inched ahead. Then Percy nudged the Traveler a little too hard. It wobbled. Easy, Percy, puffed James. And pay attention. You both have to pay attention, peeped Thomas as he lurched forward, not realizing that James and Percy weren't moving with him. The Traveler shook. Then a giant roof beam thundered to the ground. Dust covered everyone. Is everyone all right? Asked the Earl. I'm not, James shouted. My paintwork is covered with dust. They all laughed. Thomas, James, and Percy promised to be more careful, and Jack was happy to carry away the fallen rocks. Okay. Meanwhile, Stephen was eager to learn what his special job would be. Victor didn't know, so Stephen rolled down to Brendam Docks. It was very noisy there. Out of the way, little Steamy, said Diesel. We have work to do. There's no work here for an old engine like you, Cranky said. Stephen puffed sadly away from the docks. Stephen wound his way up to the Blue Mountain Quarry. It was bigger and busier than any quarry he worked at before. I'm looking for a new job, Stephen said to a narrow-gauge engine named Luke. We could always use help, Luke peeped. but each truck Stephen tried to pull was just too heavy. He steamed and strained, but none would move. Skarloey frowned. I don't think there's a job here for you, Stephen. When I worked in a mine, the trucks weren't this heavy, said Stephen. Are there any mines around here? Skarloey thought for a moment. There is an old mine near the castle ruins, but I don't think anyone works there now. I'm on a quest like the knights in olden times, thought Stephen as he pulled away to search for the mine. Stephen puffed to a slope below the castle grounds and rolled through some overgrown grass. He found the entrance to the mine, but it was boarded up. No one had worked there in years. The other engines are right, he sighed. I'm too old, slow, and weak. There's no job on this island for me. Meanwhile, at the top of the same slope, Thomas prepared to haul dirt away in the troublesome trucks. Suddenly, the trucks slipped loose and roared down the hill. Thomas didn't know it, but they were headed right towards Stephen. Stephen had no choice but to push into the abandoned mine. His funnel struck the roof, and rocks crashed down behind him, sealing up the entrance. Thomas retrieved the trucks, not knowing that Stephen was trapped in the mine. Ulfstead Castle's grand reopening was just a day away, and the island of Sodor was buzzing with excitement. Visitors hurried from the mainland to be a part of the festivities. 2 special engines named Connor and Caitlin were brought over to help carry the extra passengers. For all the activity, only Thomas noticed that Stephen was missing. Thomas went to the steamworks to ask about Stephen, and Victor told him that Stephen had left the day before to find his new job, but he didn't know what his new job was, Thomas peeped. He felt responsible. If he hadn't mentioned the job, Stephen wouldn't be missing. Thomas steamed to the sheds and chugged to the shunting yard. He rolled down to the docks and up to the quarry. There was no sign of Stephen. While Thomas raced around the island, Stephen was still in the mine, searching for a way out. He crept around dark bends and through empty tunnels, but the tracks just led him in circles. The only thing he found was an old wooden crate. Stephen's lamp was flickering, and his boiler was almost dry. He couldn't turn his wheels another inch. Thomas returned to the sheds and asked the other engines to help. Let's get those boilers bubbling and find our friend, he puffed. Sir Topham Hatt protested. I have a railway to run. Just then, the Earl drove up in a panic. I need Stephen for the opening of Ulfstead Castle tomorrow. Sir Topham Hatt agreed to let Thomas and Percy search for Stephen, and they quickly chugged off. Thomas and Percy searched every yard, station, and tunnel. Thomas was about to give up when Percy saw an overgrown track at the bottom of a hill near Ulfstead Castle. Maybe we should check there, he peeped. He's not there, Thomas replied. That's the track to the old mine. We went down there when the troublesome trucks ran away. Really, because this book didn't mention when that scene occurred. It didn't mention Percy in this adaptation, at least. But anyways. But Thomas looked anyway. He saw something familiar lying on the ground. It was Stephen's funnel. As quickly as his pistons could pump, Thomas chuffed up to the castle to get Jack the digger. When they returned, Jack started hauling rocks away from the mine entrance. As soon as it was clear, Thomas turned on his lamp and raced into the dark mine. The old track creaked under his weight. Stephen! Stephen! He peeped. Thomas heard Stephen coming his way. He wanted to call out but was too weak. He had no steam. He couldn't even move or even whistle. Really, because in the movie, he was able to do that just fine. Or no, in the movie he was able to do that by building up last-minute pressure in his boiler. But anyways. Finally, Thomas turned a corner and the beam from his lamp revealed a welcome sight. Stephen! Thomas peeped. I've come to get you out of here. Really? Stephen said, trying to be useful. I was thinking of taking up mining again. Thomas was coupled to Stephen, facing the wrong way, and carefully pushed him out of the dark mine. Percy and Jack were relieved to see that Stephen was safe. Even the Earl was there. Oh, sir, said Stephen, I found something in the mine that might be of interest to you. There's a big wooden chest. Wonderful, the Earl exclaimed, but first we must get you ready for tomorrow. You are a very important engine with a special job to do. The Earl went into the mine to find the crate, and Stephen was quickly shunted to the steamworks for repairs. And they left out the scene where Thomas has to rescue Stephen from getting even more damaged. Anyways. The next day, an excited crowd gathered around Elfstead Castle. Percy was thrilled to see that the metal man was also there, and moving. He clanked up to the podium and lifted his mask. It was the Earl. Ladies, gentlemen, engines, and coaches, welcome to Elfstead Castle. There is still work to do, but we'll soon restore King Godred's castle to its former glory. Now let me introduce my special steam engine, Stephen. He and Millie will be more than happy to show you the grounds. Stephen rolled into view. His new funnel glittered like gold. It reminded Thomas of something. But what? Most importantly, the Earl said, Stephen has found something that I thought was lost forever. The Earl opened the chest. The old chest that Stephen had found in the mine. Inside was a golden crown. King Godred's long-lost crown, he announced. The crowd gasped. It'll be returned to the castle and kept on display for all to see. Then Thomas realized what Stephen's funnel looked like. A crown! He blew his whistle. The other engines joined in and cheered for Stephen. He wasn't the fastest or strongest, but he was really useful. And today, he was a king. Oh, so here's a bit of Golden Book history. A bit of Thomas history. In the early 1940s, a loving father crafted a small blue wooden engine for his son, Christopher. The stories this father, the Reverend Wilbur Audrey, made up to accompany the wonderful toy were first published in 1945. Reverend Audrey continued to create new adventures and characters until 1972, when he retired from writing. Tommy Stubbs has been an illustrator for several decades. Lately, he has been illustrating the newest tales of Thomas and his engine friends, including all of these books, some of which I have and have read on this channel before. Oh look, and there's Tootle and Scuffy. Anyway, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Talk to y'all later.